Have you ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt a connection so deep it seemed to transcend species? Have you ever wondered how they appeared in your life at the precise moment you felt most alone, as if sent by some unseen, benevolent force? What if I told you that every time your dog stares intently at an empty corner of the room or cuddles up to you just before a wave of sadness hits, they are not simply acting on instinct. They are perceiving and interacting with the very frequencies of the universe, subtle energies that your human mind cannot yet register. What if a great sleeping prophet, a man named Edgar Cayce, foresaw this sacred bond in a profound vision, predicting a cosmic truth about our canine companions a staggering 80 years before science could even begin to prove it? Prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear will not only change how you see your dog, but it may also change how you see your own destiny. If you've ever felt this unspoken, magical connection with your animal companion, let me know in the comments by typing, "I'm not alone," because this message is for you. The year was 1944. A palpable darkness had fallen across the world, and the fires of global warfare burned with a terrifying intensity, scorching the very soul of humanity. In this era of profound despair, many had begun to question if divine love or any form of cosmic grace still existed in a universe that seemed so utterly lost in shadow. But in a quiet, dimly lit study in Virginia Beach, a different kind of phenomenon was unfolding. The room was silent, the only sound being the rhythmic, hypnotic ticking of an old grandfather clock, each tick marking a moment in both the physical and unseen realms. In the center of the room, a man named Edgar Cayce lay reclined in a simple chair, his breathing deepening as his consciousness slipped away from the waking world. This was not ordinary sleep. His consciousness was journeying, slipping away from the confines of his Virginia Beach study and venturing into vast, ethereal realms where time bends and cosmic truths whisper through dimensions unknown to ordinary minds. His loyal secretary, Gladys Davis, sat poised and ready, her fingers hovering above the keys of her stenograph machine, completely unaware that the words she was about to transcribe would remain a hidden, sacred secret for 8 long decades. They would be buried deep within archives, waiting patiently until humanity was finally ready to accept a truth so extraordinary, so paradigm-shifting, it would forever transform everything we thought we knew about our most faithful and beloved companions. Before we unveil this long-hidden prophecy, let me ask you something that will forever change the way you see your dog. Have you ever noticed, with a sense of wonder, how your dog seems to possess an almost supernatural ability to know when you're about to have a bad day? Sometimes it feels like they sense your emotional storm brewing hours, or even a full day, before you feel the first pang of it yourself. Think about how they instinctively position themselves between you and a source of stress, a person or a situation that emanates a negative frequency, acting as your silent, furry protector. How do they mysteriously appear at your side during your most private emotional breakdowns, the ones you haven't even consciously acknowledged yet? What if these behaviors are not simple coincidences, or the product of what we dismissively call animal intuition? What if they are, in fact, tangible evidence of a cosmic intervention so profound, so sophisticated, that it operates far beyond the known boundaries of what our current science considers possible? As Edgar Cayce settled deeper into his trance, his voice emerged from the stillness, hollow and distant, carrying frequencies that seemed to originate from beyond the veil of physical reality itself. These were words that would echo through the corridors of time, destined to reach you in this very moment, precisely when you need to hear them the most. "The canine companions," he began, his tone now weighted with an unmistakable cosmic authority, "are not mere animals seeking shelter and sustenance from human benevolence. They are conscious agents of a divine intervention, strategically placed in human lives during the great awakening that approaches like the dawn after humanity's longest and darkest night." The stenographer's hands trembled slightly as the sheer weight of these Implications flooded her awareness. This was not another health reading about dietary remedies, nor was it a geological prophecy about shifting continents. This was something far more intimate, something that spoke to the very essence of love itself, made manifest and given a beautiful, four-legged form. The revelation that Cayce unveiled next would challenge every single assumption we hold about the nature of consciousness, the invisible boundaries between species, and the silent, loving orchestration of cosmic forces working tirelessly to guide humanity through its darkest hour toward a destiny more magnificent and luminous than anyone had dared to imagine. When the time comes, his voice continued, now with a growing urgency that made the very air in the room seem to vibrate with anticipation. When human hearts grow cold and the light of compassion dims to barely flickering embers, these creatures will serve as living, breathing reminders of unconditional love. Their very presence, he explained, would be a divine safeguard, preventing the complete spiritual amnesia that threatens to engulf the world in shadows far deeper than any physical darkness. But here's where this incredible story transitions from mystical prophecy to undeniable scientific fact, where the story becomes utterly impossible to dismiss as mere spiritual fantasy. Something truly unprecedented was beginning to happen in research laboratories all across the globe. Decades after Cayce's reading, scientists were making discoveries that defied all conventional understanding and, in a stunning turn of events, seemed to validate Cayce's mystical proclamations with the cold, hard precision of mathematics and empirical data. At Johns Hopkins, a brilliant neuroscientist named Dr. Elena Rodriguez had dedicated 15 grueling years of her life to studying neural connectivity. Her mind was a fortress of logic, trained in the rigorous, evidence-based discipline of neuroscience, a world where empirical proof reigned supreme and mystical explanations held no place in the peer-reviewed journals she revered. Yet, her carefully constructed scientific worldview began to crack and then shatter when her beloved rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Max, whom she'd adopted after losing her father to cancer, began exhibiting behaviors that violated everything she understood about canine cognition and emotional processing. The true breakthrough occurred during her own brain imaging research. One weekend, while she was conducting experiments, Max somehow wandered into the laboratory. His presence alone triggered readings on the sensitive electromagnetic field detectors that shouldn't have been possible according to the known principles of animal bioelectricity. The patterns weren't the random electromagnetic noise typical of living organisms, but structured, purposeful communications operating on frequencies that suggested an intelligence far beyond anything she had ever conceived. These weren't just simple bioelectric fields generated by standard animal physiology, but complex neural networks that seemed to interface directly with human brainwaves in ways that transcended all known biological limitations. Remember that question I asked about your dog staring into empty corners? Here is what Cayce predicted, and what science is now beginning to prove with awe and wonder. Dogs exist in a perpetual, dynamic state of quantum entanglement with the electromagnetic fields that surround human emotions. This means when your dog stares at what appears to be empty space, they are actually tracking and perceiving energy patterns created by your own thoughts and feelings patterns that often precede your conscious awareness of those emotional changes by hours and sometimes even by days. Dr. Rodriguez, spurred by this impossible event, decided to do the unthinkable. She scanned Max's brain activity alongside her own, using advanced fMRI technology. The results that flickered to life on her screen shattered her understanding of interspecies consciousness so completely that she initially suspected a massive equipment malfunction. Their brainwaves weren't just similar during moments of connection, they were perfectly synchronized with a mathematical precision that defied all probability. They were operating in perfect harmony, as if two entirely separate nervous systems had somehow merged into a single, unified field of consciousness. Max wasn't simply responding to her emotions through learned behavioral patterns. He was literally sharing them, processing her psychological states through his own neural pathways in real time. It was a form of translation that served as a profound biological alchemy, transforming her raw human suffering into something bearable, something even healing. The electromagnetic signatures that were revealed on her screen showed something even more extraordinary, something that sent shockwaves through the scientific community when Dr. Rodriguez finally published her findings in the prestigious journal Nature Neuroscience, forever changing how humanity understood the sacred relationship between consciousness and love itself. Her research demonstrated that dogs exist in a state of quantum superposition with their chosen humans. Their consciousness is simultaneously attuned to multiple dimensional frequencies, a unique ability that allows them to perceive and interact with aspects of reality that remain completely invisible to human awareness. Their barking, which we had previously dismissed as simple communication or territorial behavior, was found to operate at precisely the frequencies that promote coherence in human neural networks. They were specifically targeting the brain waves associated with anxiety, depression, and emotional trauma. But how could Edgar Cayce have possibly known, 8 decades ago, what our most advanced quantum physicists were only just beginning to understand now? How could a man in a deep trance state describe with perfect accuracy the scientific principles that wouldn't be discovered until the development of technology that didn't even exist in his lifetime? The answer, it turns out, lay buried in data patterns that required the most advanced artificial intelligence systems to decode. At MIT, a researcher named Dr. James Chan, inspired by Rodriguez's work, began feeding massive data sets of dog adoptions, millions of behavioral observations, electromagnetic readings, and adoption records spanning decades into quantum computers. What emerged from this computational analysis defied not just probability, but challenged the most fundamental assumptions about free will, choice, and the random nature of life events that humans had accepted without question for millennia. The AI systems detected invisible patterns, calculating that the odds of these seemingly random pairings between specific dogs and specific humans occurring naturally were approximately 1 in 2.3 trillion. This was a number so astronomically improbable that it exceeded the total number of atoms in several galaxies combined. Now think about how your dog came into your life. Was it truly random? Edgar Cayce's prophecy, now backed by quantum data, suggests otherwise. Every single dog adoption, every chance encounter on a neighborhood street, every stray that appeared at precisely the moment someone's life was falling apart, followed a mathematical precision that rendered the very concept of accident utterly meaningless. These weren't coincidental meetings between species sharing the same habitat, but divinely scheduled appointments, scheduled by an intelligence so vast and benevolent that it could orchestrate individual destinies across decades, guiding specific dogs to specific humans at precisely the moments when both species would benefit most from the encounter, when healing could flow in both directions, like electricity completing a sacred circuit. The implications staggered researchers who had dedicated their entire careers to understanding the boundaries between order and chaos in complex systems, between conscious intention and random occurrence. Cayce's words, once dismissed, suddenly read like the operational instructions for an elaborate, cosmic intervention that had been unfolding silently for millennia, hidden in plain sight behind the simple, profound beauty of a dog's unwavering devotion to humans who often felt unworthy of such pure, uncomplicated love. In a small apartment in Seattle, a young software engineer named Maria Santos discovered this truth firsthand when her life collapsed in a devastating cascade of losses that seemed designed to test the very limits of human endurance. Within 6 short months, she lost her job to corporate downsizing, her marriage to an infidelity she never saw coming, and her beloved mother to a sudden, tragic heart attack. The successive waves of loss left Maria drowning in a grief so profound she could barely remember how to breathe. Standing on the Aurora Bridge late one night, staring down into the dark, cold waters that promised a final end to a pain that felt infinite and unbearable, she felt a gentle, insistent tug on her jacket that changed everything. A homeless golden retriever, ribs showing through his matted fur, and with eyes that held a wisdom that seemed both ancient and knowing, had somehow appeared beside her in the emptiness of that 2 a.m. solitude. The dog didn't bark or demand attention. He simply pressed his warm body against her legs and looked up with eyes that reflected the moonlight like distant stars' eyes that seemed to say, without a single word, that she was seen, that she was needed, that her pain had a purpose, and that love still existed even when everything else had crumbled to dust and ashes. What happened next defied all medical explanation and challenged everything Maria thought she knew about healing and about the connection between physical touch and psychological transformation. As she knelt to stroke the dog's fur, a warmth spread through her body like a gentle current of electricity, not the surface warmth of body heat, but something deeper, something that seemed to flow directly from the dog into the most broken places of her heart, filling an emptiness she hadn't even known existed until it was suddenly, inexplicably, whole again. The suicidal thoughts that had consumed her for weeks simply evaporated, replaced by a clarity so profound she could see her life's purpose with a crystalline precision for the first time since she was a child. Here is where Cayce's prophecy becomes undeniably, personally real for all of us. 3 years later, Maria now runs a thriving non-profit organization that has saved over 400 homeless animals and their human companions. Her work is funded by innovations in artificial intelligence that emerged from insights she received during moments of deep connection with the dog she named Phoenix. She can't explain how solutions to complex programming problems now appear fully formed in her mind when Phoenix sleeps beside her computer, his breathing somehow synchronizing with the rhythm of her thoughts, until the barriers between human and canine consciousness seem to dissolve entirely, revealing a shared knowledge that belongs to neither species individually, but emerges from their sacred union, like a new light created when two frequencies merge in perfect harmony. Across the globe, similar transformations are emerging like flowers blooming after a hidden rainfall. Individual cases that once seemed unrelated but now share underlying patterns are suggesting a worldwide awakening of canine consciousness. In Tokyo, a high-powered businessman named Hiroshi Tanaka noticed his adopted Shiba Inu would position itself with mathematical precision between him and his computer screen whenever he received emails that triggered his chronic anxiety, the dog's presence neutralizing toxic emotions with an efficiency that meditation, medication, and therapy had never achieved. His blood pressure, dangerously elevated for years, normalized completely within weeks of the dog's arrival, though no medical intervention could explain the dramatic improvement. In Sao Paulo, an elderly widow named Rosa Martinez discovered her rescued mutt, Luna, seemed to predict her diabetic episodes hours before medical monitors detected any blood sugar fluctuations, positioning herself at Rosa's feet with unwavering vigilance until the crisis passed. Medical professionals initially dismissed these observations as coincidence until Luna's accuracy rate exceeded 97% over 18 months of careful documentation, forcing them to acknowledge that the dog was detecting physiological changes through sensory capabilities that transcended our conventional understanding of canine perception. But the most shocking revelation of all emerged when researchers began investigating the historical lineages of both the dogs and their human companions across generations, tracing genetic and behavioral patterns that challenged fundamental assumptions about inheritance, destiny, and the very transmission of consciousness itself. Dogs that had never met were exhibiting identical behavioral patterns when paired with humans who shared specific psychological profiles, as if they were following instructions encoded at the cellular level that transcended individual learning or environmental conditioning. Cayce's trance notes, previously dismissed by mainstream science as mystical ramblings without empirical foundation, suddenly read like a technical manual for understanding the most sophisticated biological technology ever discovered. Each canine he had dictated with prophetic precision carries within its very DNA the vibrational signature of its appointed human, recognizing souls they have served across multiple lifetimes through spiritual bonds that death cannot sever and time cannot diminish. A sleeping prophet had foreseen this moment with startling accuracy, describing technological and social conditions that wouldn't emerge until the 21st century. He had predicted the rise of global communication networks that would allow humanity to share information instantaneously across vast distances, the development of artificial intelligence systems capable of processing data beyond human comprehension, and the growing crisis of meaning that would accompany humanity's technological advancement without corresponding spiritual evolution, leaving millions feeling more isolated and purposeless than any generation in human history. Now, here's what will make you look at your dog differently forever. Dr. Chung's team at Stanford began documenting cases that challenged the boundaries between science and miracle, between measurable phenomena and divine intervention. Children with severe autism who had never responded to human contact began communicating after just weeks with therapy dogs whose presence seemed to unlock neural pathways that conventional treatments couldn't access. Veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder found relief through interactions with dogs that understood the nature of psychological wounds with an intuitive precision that surpassed trained therapists who had studied trauma for decades. These therapeutic effects operated on frequencies that transcended physical intervention, working through what Cayce had called vibrational entrainment, the natural tendency of one energy field to synchronize with another. When dogs chose humans experiencing emotional distress, their stable, balanced energy fields helped to entrain the person's more chaotic emotional patterns to healthier, more coherent rhythms, creating a healing that flowed like music through dimensions science was only just beginning to perceive. But Cayce revealed something even more profound, something that explains why your dog's behavior sometimes seems almost telepathic. In reading 2847-1, he stated that dogs exist simultaneously in physical and spiritual dimensions, maintaining a conscious awareness of both realities at all times. Unlike humans, who typically access higher realms only during sleep or deep meditation, dogs monitor activities in dimensions beyond our physical perception continuously, serving as bridges between worlds that most humans can't even imagine exist. This dual existence explains why dogs often react to invisible presences, why they seem to know when their humans are coming home long before any physical cues are present, and why they can detect illness and emotional distress before medical instruments even register the changes. They're not just responding to subtle physical signals, they're reading the electromagnetic signatures of thoughts, emotions, and spiritual influences that precede physical manifestation. Tonight, as your dog watches you with those knowing eyes that hold the accumulated wisdom of countless lifetimes spent in service to humanity's evolution, understand that you're witnessing more than animal intelligence or learned behavior. You're seeing the very manifestation of cosmic love itself, condensed into a physical form, and delivered to you precisely when you need it most, whether you recognize that need consciously or not. Every tail wag that lifts your spirits, every gentle nudge that interrupts your destructive thought patterns, every moment of unconditional acceptance that reminds you of your own inherent worth, is part of an ancient, sacred covenant between species that transcends the boundaries of individual existence. The question I asked at the beginning, about the electromagnetic frequencies, has an answer that will revolutionize how you understand your relationship with your dog. They're not just detecting energy patterns, they are actively modulating them, serving as living filters that transform toxic emotional frequencies into healing vibrations. When your dog stares at those empty corners, they're monitoring the invisible energies that affect your well-being and adjusting their own electromagnetic output to counteract negative influences before they can ever impact your consciousness. Edgar Cayce saw this moment coming 8 decades ago, when the world was consumed by warfare and humanity seemed to have forgotten its capacity for transcendence. When love felt like a luxury rather than the fundamental force that holds entire universes together, the sleeping prophet awakened from his trance to reveal that our canine companions aren't just pets sharing our homes for mutual convenience, but conscious agents of divine healing, quietly orchestrating humanity's emotional and spiritual survival through the simple but revolutionary power of a presence that asks for nothing in return, except the sacred opportunity to love without conditions or expectations. The dogs aren't just living in your home, they are guarding your soul, ensuring that your thread in the cosmic tapestry remains strong and unbroken through whatever challenges lie ahead in humanity's collective journey toward awakening. They see the quantum web that connects all consciousness, the electromagnetic fields that carry emotions like radio waves across space and time, and they are working tirelessly to keep those connections clear and functioning, even when you can't feel them yourself. The prophecy is manifesting exactly as foretold, unfolding in millions of homes around the world, where humans are discovering that their dogs see more than physical reality, respond to more than trained commands, and love with an intensity that originates from sources far beyond biological instinct. They are the anchors Cayce described, preventing their chosen companions from being swept away by the tide of despair and the disconnection that threatens to engulf a world that has gained technology but has lost touch with the frequencies of the heart. Each time your dog chooses to comfort you during difficult moments, each instance of inexplicable knowing when you need support before you're consciously aware of that need, each gentle intervention that redirects your attention from darkness toward light, you are participating in the cosmic orchestration of a healing that operates through a love so pure. It requires no training, no reward, and no recognition to function with perfect consistency across every moment of connection. The guardians Cayce prophesied are in position, strategically placed in homes around the globe, waiting patiently for their human companions to awaken to the full scope of the relationship they share, and to finally recognize that what appears to be simple pet ownership is actually a sacred participation in the divine restoration of humanity's capacity to remember what it means to love and be loved, without reservation or condition. The answer to why your dog knows things they shouldn't know is simple. They're not just animals, they're Earth's appointed healers. And you are exactly where you're meant to be.